Hey folks, I'm going to make a video on Shadow Empire's user interface. This is aimed as a tutorial for people, just to kind of take you through what everything in Shadow Empire does, because the user interface really is kind of a microcosm for the overall macrocosm of the game mechanics and the way that they all interact. So if you go through the various elements of the user interface, you're pretty much going to learn most of what's in the game, right? Just be aware that this is not going to be a full tutorial, because otherwise it's going to be like 10 hours long, okay? I'm just going to go through the user interface, each element at a time, and briefly describe what it does. At the end of the video, my intention is to talk a little bit more generally about user interface design, why it is that Shadow Empire's user interface is actually really good and not bad like a lot of people seem to think it is, and why I think in future my opinions on user interface design will eventually be integrated into the greater games design circuit in about 5-10 years time. That's my prediction, but you can stick around for that later. For now, let's just talk about Shadow Empire. Okay, so I'm going to assume you know roughly what Shadow Empire is. You've looked at the Steam page. You know that it's a 4X game with heavy wargame elements. That's basically it's a simulation heavy 4X game with a very, very strong war focus. It is a war game as much as it is a 4X, but it is a bona fide 4X game with everything that means. Okay, we're going to take a look at the user interface. So first of all, we've got the name of your regime. Okay, you can click on this to go to your to go to where your first SHQ is. I'm not going to describe what everything does, by the way, guys, because otherwise, like I say, we'll be here for a long time. Okay, so just briefly, the way that Shadow Empire's military command is organized is you have the strategic HQ at the top, and then you have everything that comes underneath that. The strategic HQ then is incredibly important. It's responsible for the management of pretty much most of your empire. You can have more than one of these, by the way, but you'll start out with just one. In some games you may want more. In very large games, like, you know, I've had 4 or 5 sometimes, but they basically there to manage a front. That's the idea. If you understand what a front is in warfare terms, generally speaking, the strategic headquarters is there to manage a front. And as you can see here on the strategic HQ panel, this is on the left hand side of the screen. This is going to show you anything that's related to this strategic HQ here. Look, so this is the SHQ inventory bar. This is going to give you an overview of your resources in the game. These are the main resources. I'm not going to go into all of them. We'll do that in another video if I continue doing these. But for now, just know that all of the resources that are available to this specific strategic headquarters, and so for the most of you when you're learning the game, for basically everything, these are going to be shown here. Okay, food, water, fuel, etc. All of this is right down to troops, and there's some special stuff down here too. Okay, so that's what this tab does here. That's basically an overview. Alright, next is your regime profile bar. Shadow Empire uses a abstracted system to determine the way that your government is behaving, I guess, and the constituents, the consistency of your political groups. So you've got politics, you've got society, and then you've got psychology. Okay, and each of these three are further split into 3 elements. Again, not going to go through the profiles, it's a complicated topic, but this is where you can see at a glance which one is currently the most prominent, and it shows you you can see these arrows point out. So if you increase meritocracy, for example, you will decrease politics at a certain level. If you increase politics to over a certain level, I think it's 40 or 50 points, you'll start to decrease autocracy if it's over a certain level. The rules for this are a little complex, but this is what this does. You can also see your militia or your militancy here. So this is how supportive you are of militia forces. Okay, so this is the regime profile bar. Just so that you can link this up, the regime profile tree is here, okay, and this shows you how the things that you get as you go through. We'll come back to that in a minute. Okay, next we have the quick zone bar. So here you can just click on these I think you can, yeah, that's right. And you can just move between the zones. Zones are the names of your cities. The way that Shadow Empire works, because it's a post-apocalyptic game, you'll be ruling over a lot of physical territory, but only small amounts of it will be populated. So what happens is you have one city. I mean, often it's a town or a village, but, you know, for example, here is a small town. This one here is a village. This large one is a big town. These can grow in size, but for the most part, you know, these are the administrative hubs for the area around them. This is not the best game to show you in terms of showing you how zones link up, because I've only got a few zones and they're in different places. Okay, but you can see that zones they're actually linked by these, or they've got borders around them. So this is an enemy zone here, and this is my zone here. Okay, so this is a quick way just to go through all of your cities essentially, or your zones. Okay, so this is the left bar. All right, we'll look at... Let's go through the top bar now, I guess. So this is you can click on this just to go to your capital. It shows you the name of your regime and your banner. This tab is the map mode. This is the mode we're in currently at the moment. Well, actually, I'll go through these in a second. Let's just go over this top bar. This is fate points. Fate points are used to play fate stratagems. You get a few fate points. You'll get a fate point every time you go through an epoch of the game if you turn that feature on, and I highly recommend you do. Don't play without the epochs, man. It makes the game, you know, they really give shape to the game. Political points are generated by your bureaucracy, basically. So you'll build these assets in the game. You know, that's the game's name for buildings, I guess. Called bureaucratic offices, and bureaucratic offices create bureaucratic points. Okay, bureaucratic points. Oh, sorry, I'm getting confused with political points. Well, yeah, so there is a building high command that actually generates both, but political points are generated by the strategic. I think it's the high command, strategic high command. Supreme Command Council. These guys generate your political power. Political power is used to do certain things in the game, and that's done via these stratagem cards. Okay, it's not a card game, Shadow Empire, but it uses cards as a way to abstract the things that your regime can do in certain areas. Okay, again, we'll come back to that in a minute, but this is your political points. You gain political points in various ways, like I say, through the High Command Council and through funding various councils, basically. So the more people you've got working in this High Command building, the more you'll get as a set of points, and then that is converted into political points through funding via bureaucratic points. God, it's funny when I talk about Shadow Empire and I actually sit and think about how complicated it is. It's quite amusing. Anyway, let's move on. So this is fate points. This is just for playing certain cards. You'll see that you get fate points. These green cards are the fate point cards. They're like special cards that you can play, and you know, they're useful in the early game usually. Okay, and the political points are for other stratagems, the standard stratagems that you're going to be playing. So, for example, the ability to recruit a new leader will use political points. If you want to decrease your income tax, it's going to cost you 6 political points. If you want to, get all of your generals together to do some war games and increase all their skills, that's going to cost you 39 political points. Okay, that's what PP means. Okay, next is credits. This is pretty self-explanatory. Credits are a form of currency that you use in trade, and it's used to pay your staff, it's used to pay your troops. Very, very important. Credits, you know, getting a handle of your economy in Shadow Empire early on is very, very important. Okay, so that's these three main resources that you have at the top here. So these are like general resources right across your empire. Yeah, credits is just used right across your empire, as are political points. I got confused with bureaucratic points, but bureaucratic points are also similar. They are generated in zone, just like credits are, but they then contribute towards this global pool, which is then used to do things like research and stuff. I will just very briefly talk about bureaucratic points now, since I made that mistake and got confused. Let's just go into this in here. So bureaucratic points are generated by workers working in bureaucratic buildings, which you will build in your cities. Bureaucratic points are really important because the more bureaucratic points you have, generally speaking, the more output you will get from the various councils. The councils do different things. They generate stratagems which allow you to then play political points to make, to make certain things happen. Like I say, increasing taxes, setting tariffs, these kind of like special abilities like private investment, which will make your zones have more commercial funding, this kind of stuff, right? So that's what bureaucratic points are. They are not shown actually on this bar because they don't work quite the same as political points. They're not like political points you choose to spend, whereas bureaucratic points go into a pool every turn. So you'll see, for example, next year, this is telling me how many bureaucratic points we made this turn. We produced 276. What then happens is those bureaucratic points are split amongst your main councils. I don't have all of them here in this game, but there's a bunch of councils and they all do different things, like military research, model design is for new military models, foreign affairs is for diplomacy stuff, there's a secret service council for spying, that kind of stuff. You get the idea, right? So that's what bureaucratic points do. All right. Now let's look at the main tabs. We got the map mode. This is the map. You can scroll it around. There's well, I'll just talk about some hotkeys while we're here. You want to be using I. If you hit the I button, this goes to inspect mode. This is what you want to be using all the time. Yeah, when you're just moving around looking at stuff. This allows you to examine hexes. Okay, and you can see we're in. It says here down at the bottom, on the bottom right, we're in inspection mode. Okay, so clicking on here, we can see we're in a high. This is the hex number 121 by 6 X121 Y16. I think that's correct. And so that's where the hex number is. It tells you what the terrain is. So you've got all this terrain down here. But for now, you just want to be using inspection mode. Okay. We've also, if you right click on any hex, you'll see that you've got various order modes. So if we now go to move, you can, when we now click on something with, like any hex that's got a unit in like this, you can see that you get the option to move it. You don't want to be looking around the map in this mode. This is not the operational art of war where you're constantly in that awful movement mode. You want to be using inspection mode. This is one of my top tips for playing the game. You hit the I key all the time, and this allows you to be moving, to be looking around the map without accidentally moving stuff that you don't want to be moving. So that's my first big tip for this game. Okay, there are various other map modes. So we've got group move. You can move everything in a single hex all at once. You'll want that a lot. There is strategic move, which enables you to, when you've got, let's just turn on the logistics look. So the strategic move means that we can, this is normal move, yeah? So I've got this militia unit. We can move it anywhere we want, providing we've got the movement points. But if we use a strategic move, providing we've got enough logistical points, we can move these units along our road network. So what's happening is you're loading these guys into trucks or rail, if you've got rail. So it's either trucks or railroads, into rail carts, and then you're moving them, and you'll see that you can only move along your road networks doing this. This is a way that you can move your troops very, very long distance. Later on, like this, if you've got the, we can actually move them between ports. This is a DLC feature, by the way. This is just with Oceania, but yeah, it shows you the idea, right? Then we've got these guys up here, and with a normal move, we could move them this far. Down this, with the 100 action points, we can get all the way down here. But if we strategic move them, we can move them all the way, well, right to the other end of our empire. Look, I can move them right over there if I wanted. And what that's simulating is them just jumping on trucks, them being trucked over to this port, then they're boarding the maritime trading house boats, and then they're going in the boats, and then they're, they eventually get all this way. Okay. Let's look at the other movement modes. We've got ranged attack, which is for artillery, and so certain things can fire multiple hexes. Like rocket artillery can usually have 4 or 5 hexes, maybe 3, depending on your model. Artillery can usually just bombard into the next hex, but it's very, very powerful. So that's for ranged attack. Air attack is for ordering bomber attacks, and ground attacks, strategic bombing. Air recon is what it does exactly what it sounds like. You will select an airport, and then you will select air recon, and you'll click a hex, and then it will send an air mission out to do some reconnaissance on those hexes. So that's what that one's for. Air bridge, that's complex. That's for later in the game. But an air bridge essentially sets up a logistical link between 2 distant locations, just like this port link has done. So if you're not playing with the Oceania DLC, which I highly advise against, by the way, when you're first playing. Don't play with Oceania. It's really, really complex compared to the main game. Even though it does add this cool stuff, you need, in my opinion, you need to know the game quite well to really be able to stand a chance of winning on Oceania. So I would, for new players, sorry Vic, but I'm going to say I would advise not to play with Oceania at first. It adds a layer of complexity to the game, which is really good fun for experts or for people who are well familiar with the game, but it really complicates things for new players, so I would avoid it your first few times. Play Oceania later. It's a great DLC though, in my opinion. Okay. So that's what air bridges do. They basically allow, let's say this is an enemy line, which it is, look, or these aren't my enemies, these are allies in this game, but let's say this is a line of enemy troops, and we haven't got any recon on them, so we can't actually see them. With an air bridge, we could we could set up an air bridge temporarily, like in this square here, and then we could use that to drop some paratroopers down behind the enemy line and cut them off in supply. That's one use for an air bridge, is a military thing. The other use for it is if you've not got, let's say for example, there's, like in this game, there's no road link between here and here, between these two zones. What we can do is we can send transport aircraft across to provide a link between, in this case it'll be the SHQ and one of its distant zones. So in this way you can, let's say, like in this game, we're getting all our metal from recycling here, and we've got no metal whatsoever in our SHQ area because we've completely depleted all our metal. So in that case, you're going to have to be sending it via aircraft, okay? And it's expensive in terms of fuel and stuff, but there you go. That's what airbridge means. It's a little bit of an advanced rule, but you will use it later. Construct road is simple. You can just build dirt roads, or sealed roads later on. It tells you how many industrial points you need for that. That's what that does. So traffic signs is a logistics thing. I'm going to show you where this is, but I want you to ignore it for now. The game uses what's called the pull system by default, and when you're starting the game, I highly recommend you do not use traffic lights to start off with. Put the game on beginner or on easy. I think basically put it on beginner, certainly no more than normal, because Shadow Empire is a difficult game with good AI, okay, compared to most 4X games. It's difficult. You want to put it on the lower difficulty setting, and you want to just either turn the mid-core logistics on or the easy logistics for your first games until you get used to it, because logistics sinks or you'll sink or swim with logistics in this game. Games are won and lost on logistics, and I'm an expert player now, I'd say, and yet I still lose games because logistics is difficult to manage, and it's deliberately so. Not in terms of, we'll talk about the nuances of logistics later, but for the purposes of this UI tutorial, here is the logistics, here is the traffic light stuff. I'll just tell you briefly how it works. Let's say we need more logistics up this way because we've got a blockage in this road. There's not enough trucks going that way, and we don't need anything going that way. What you do is you can block certain percentage of the logistics going through to that particular route. So you'll see now when we press P for the predicted logistics calculation, you'll see that this is blocked off this way now. So next turn we're not going to get any logistics going through. Now there's some nuance to this. Yeah, the pull system's involved, so it will actually still pull stuff through. But anyway, for now, this is how it works. This is how you set traffic lights. You block off, you see the hex here, the different directions, shows you where the roads are, and you can block off certain roads. Again, I would ignore that for your first few playthroughs, honestly, guys. Just don't worry about logistics. Turn it off, put it on easy mode, put it on mid-core logistics, whatever you do, and then when you've learned the game a little bit, then come back and put the real logistics on, because that's where the real meat of the game is. There's one more. What was the other one? Oh yeah, zone borders. So zone borders is for painting zone, like let's say that I own this zone here and this zone here, and I want to make it so that this zone is smaller. There's a way of painting them in. Okay, I'm not going to show you how to do that. It's not that difficult. Basically, I can't do it here because I don't have two zones next to one another, so this is a bit of a bad example for a game, I'm afraid. But yeah, you basically paint them in by hand, and you click and you paint the borders. It takes a little bit of getting used to, but there you go. Alright, so that's the map mode. This is just for moving around the map. You can scroll in and out, look, with the mouse wheel. There's other controls as well. There's some other hotkeys. So one key on your keyboard, on your not the numeric pad, but on the, you know, the normal number keys above your QWERTY. You've got, if you hit 1, that removes all units, so you can see the stuff that's underneath. So again, you want to be in inspect mode. Hit the I key, and then you can see stuff that's on these tiles, right? Show you how this works in a minute. Okay, so that's 1 key, just removes your units. 2 removes the names of places, just in case it's getting a bit messy or whatever. Sometimes I find it easier to sort of look at stuff, turn this off, just so that I can get a better view of what's going on strategically or tactically, and then I can turn these back on later. The 3 key, I forget what that one does now. Yeah, I forget what the 3 does now. It's something similar, basically. Apologies. 4 key turns on the hex, the hex tile indicators. Look, so you can actually see it turns on these little hexes. I turn those off because I think the game looks better without them, and I don't need them. But you know, if you're counting hexes, sometimes that can be useful. 5 key darkens the area around enemy territory. So on certain map types, sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to see which is your territory and which is the enemies. So if you hit 5, it will darken it and show you. 6 key is your local pickup range. This is a logistics thing. Again, I don't want to go too deeply into this, but basically logistics is you know, stuff that your units need, like fuel, food, ammunition. They have to pick it up from the SHQ. The SHQ sends it out to where it's needed automatically, but it can only go through these logistical roads, you know, through the roads, any port connections that you've got, you know, the air bridge, whatever. But you don't have to be on a road to pick up stuff, right? So let's find, we've got any units that are off a road. So let's say we send these guys out over here, yeah? Right down this way. Okay, now these guys are off a road, so they're relying on local pickup. That means they're sending trucks, their own, like, you know, their own trucks out back to a road to pick up supplies for them, and then they're driving them back out again. You can only do this for a certain range, and you'll see here, look, there's a color coding. So when you hit this 6 key, the green area is all areas within your logistics network that have full access to supplies. When it goes to this yellow color, it means you're going to get less. So you'll always get food at this level, but you might not get all of your fuel, or you might not get all of your ammunition. And then certain areas, let's see if we've got anywhere. Yeah, like here, for example. Let me just see if I can. Okay, so we just ran into an enemy. And again, I'm just trying to get. Is there anywhere? Oh, here we go, look. So here, look. So here you've got the green pickup, look. So anywhere in this green area, you're going to get the full supply. Here's a yellow one. You're going to get somewhat less. Then here in the bluey colour, you're going to get even less. And then by the time you get to the red, you're basically only getting minimal pickup. Anywhere outside of the red, you're not going to get anything. You're not even going to get food. So this means that, look, you see that the logistics network ends here. So after a certain amount of squares or hexes, your units will not be able to send trucks back to go and pick up what they need. That 6 key is essential. You'll use this all the time. You also want to turn it off when you're not using it, because it can be a little bit confusing. I find it clutters the map. So you'll see when you see me play, I will turn this on and off all the time. Okay, there's some other keys as well. 7, 8, 9. I think they're to do with next unit. I never use these because I just I look around the map to see what I need to do. But some, you know, if it will cycle. Those keys will cycle through, you know, next unit that's not been moved, that kind of stuff. All right, so I'm going to take a drink. Okay, so the next tab here at the top, I think we've gone over most of the map stuff. I'm not going to. I suppose maybe while we're looking at the map, we might as well look at this actually. So yeah, because this is part of the map mode. Okay, so we've got the zone tab here. The zone tab gives you some information about, you know, basic information about the zone that you've got. So here's my zone name, Metaslope. This is the name. It tells you the city level. You can build more. You can build more effective assets or buildings, depending on the size of the zone. Shadow Empire models population in 2 ways. It's got your, well, 3 ways really. You've got your standard population, which are just people who live where, you know, who live in the area, and then you've got free folk, which are people. So your populace live in your city, the actual city. Free folk are like bands of unintegrated settlers. Oh no, sorry, kind of like yeah, war refugees. Usually they're people who've learned to live out in the wastelands, or parts of the planet that are not well populated. They're like nomads, and your job is to kind of integrate them. That will happen naturally, but so what happens is you'll see this free folk number. These are wild, independent and hidden people outside of your control, living somewhere in the outbacks of this zone. They can be potential new population. So you'll see that the tooltip explains it quite well. So the populace is an amalgamation of your normal population and your workers. Okay, and you can see by clicking on these tabs here that you can see the difference. It tells you the zone recon, how many spies that you've got. So if you're looking at an enemy zone, you can see here, look, you might have spies. It tells you how many recon points you've got on this zone. That's usually coming from units that are adjacent to the zone borders. And it shows you who the governor is too. So in this case, this is our governor. Here we can call our governor and give him orders, and we can play stratagem cards on him, and it will automatically go to the zone stratagem. So for example, if we want to play a stratagem on this particular zone, for example, we want to give money to our populace to make them happier. That would be one example, paying 3 political points, obviously. And we've got 2 of those cards. Okay, so that's your overview. This button talks about population. This stuff's really complex, guys. I'm going to go through it relatively quickly, because I think for beginners, you can ignore a lot of this, actually, when you're first playing. You will need to know it for later, though. The higher the difficulty level, the more you need to understand this stuff. But for now, don't worry about it too much. This button here talks about population in general. If you hold over here, actually, some of the most important information comes from the tooltip. It'll tell you why people joined your population, why they're leaving. It gives you an indication as to what's going on. It's really important. So you can see that here in this tooltip. It tells you how many private jobs there are. How much the private industry here, this income thing tells you how much the private industry are paying each of the people in the private industry. Shadow Empire's got like a dual economy. In fact, it's got 3 kind of economies, really. The first economy is a private one, which is just going along. It's a simulation based thing, and it's these brown assets here, so that people who are working in these AI built private economy buildings, so town customs, the parks, the commercial area, all this stuff is basically contributing to your city in an indirect way. You don't really control this, okay? There are ways that you can affect what's going on here, including playing certain stratagems and, by setting certain policies, but for the most part, you don't have any control over this. This just gives you passive income of various things, usually quality of life points, which makes your cities better. But for the most part, you don't touch it. Okay, so that is what... that's where you'll see all this stuff. It'll show you how many funds the zone has for building these assets. What happens is the private population, when they've got a certain amount of funds, they will actually build a new private asset. Okay, and that's really helpful. So you want them to be as wealthy as possible. This is also shows you where you tax people. So if you look at the private economy, you'll see that we're making a certain amount of income, and then there's a certain amount of expenses. At the bottom of those expenses, you can see your income tax. So once you've got your internal, what's it called? The Interior Council. The Interior Council will enable you to generate taxation cards, and then you can start raising and lowering taxes, and that's how you make income. That's one way you make income. So it's taxed off the private economy. Wow, I didn't intend this to be a full tutorial to the game, but I guess when you're talking about the UI, you kind of need to show what everything does. Okay, so that's their private economy. It gives you a breakdown of where everything's coming from. This is complex stuff, and I won't go into it now. This service tax is like a free tax that you get. This shows you what you're making there. Service, by the way, one thing that's not shown here is that service tax also gives you metal and some other, I think it just gives you metal and maybe a little fuel, but it gives you certain resources too. So service tax is actually more important than it looks. Income tax is how much you're making in income tax, obviously. Sales tax is how much you made this turn. This is how much you made this turn, I think, in sales taxes. We'll talk about that when we talk about the traders. The next button is your workers. These are the guys who are working in your government assets. These are the buildings that you manually build yourself. Okay, so just to reiterate, you've got population which are private. They build private stuff that's nothing to do with you really, that just contributes to your empire in a passive way. And then you've got the public stuff, and the public stuff here is these are guys you actually pay. You set them a salary, you decide how many of them are hired, and it tells you how many there are. Balancing this is really important. Just as a quick tip, you always want at least one more you need to have a higher salary for your workers than you do than workers in the private industry are making. Okay, so here you'll see they're making 0.004 credits per person. That's their salary in the private sector. So in the public sector you need it a little bit more. So here I've got it at 6. Ideally you want it at 5. It just depends. Sometimes you want to make it higher to attract more people in if you've got problems. Again, complicated topic for another time. So that's your worker. Then we've got production penalties, and this is penalties that are coming into your production. Just ignore that for now, but that's where it is. Okay, the admin. This is the administration tab, basically the zone administration mode. This is all complex stuff, but I'm going to show you where it is. Administration strain basically is there's an optimum level where a zone can be a certain size, right? Let's say that this is my only city, but this zone goes right out here and there's no other cities. If I then have, like an asset out here, like a mine or like an airbase, it's going to take a lot of effort to administrate it from that distance. So you get this thing called administrative strain. This needs to be under 10%. After 10%, you start getting penalties. So if you've got like a city right down here, but loads of assets out here, you might want to consider making a new city. You can do that with colonists. To reduce that admin strain. After a bit, admin strain is crippling, so you do need to consider this, but again, it's a complicated topic. We don't need to worry about it now. Investment budget is this is credits that you can give to your population in order for them to help them grow their private sector. So I'll talk about this very briefly. Shadow Empire is an amazing game because it's very complex, but it's actually quite easy to learn, contrary to popular belief. Part of the reason is because a lot of the systems can be automated. Vic put this private sector in here really so that if you don't want to have to worry too much about the city management stuff, it kind of does it for you. But the genius of this system is that for expert players, you can also manipulate this in various ways in order to get even more optimization out of your empire. So it's a wonderful system because it acts to help new players, but it also is there as crunchy, super complex and crunchy game mechanics for experts and nerds like me who like doing this kind of thing. Okay, so that's why you've got this private sector and public sector. That's the whole point of it. It's there basically to as extra detail to flesh out the simulation, but also because it helps new players learn. And so if you've got lots of credits, right, and you're giving them extra investment every turn, they will just put that money straight into building new buildings. So that's how much you're giving there. So investment budgeted, that's how much is given. This is how much they've got in their investment treasury. Whether they've got whether you're allowing them to take emergency food from the SHQ. So for example, if this city is actually starving, it means that the SHQ will then that turn send food out to them to prevent starvation. You want that on all the time, pretty much. There are occasions when you'll turn this off, but it's very situational. Recruit and colony sign up is just how much of a bonus that you give to people who are joining your empire. It also tells you how many people you've got set to come out of your population. So I've got 100 here, so 100 people will be becoming military recruits every turn, and 100 will be becoming colonists. And it works in multiples of 100. And this tells you how many people you've got set and how much recruit bonus you're paying. If you've got really low population happiness, but you need to get your military out because you're being invaded and you've not got enough recruits to form new military units, you can actually basically bribe people to join up. That's one way of doing it. Income tax tells you how much income tax you've got across your nation, and how much sales tax is, which affects your trade coming in. And then it tells you which SHQ this zone is attached to. So you'll see all of my zones are attached to the first SHQ because we've only got one SHQ. When you've got more than one SHQ, by the way, guys, it will appear here. Okay, so you'll be able to go through multiple SHQs. But again, that's not something you'll do in most games. Here's your population happiness. I won't explain how this works. Read the manual basically, but yeah, here's where it shows you your loyalty, which is one of the modifiers for happiness. Hunger is here, so if your people are starving, you'll see it here. Short and long-term casualties are how your happiness is affected by the amount of losses that you're getting during a war. Okay, then so this is for population only. Then this tooltip's usually more important than this actually. So if you look at this tooltip, it'll tell you why population happiness is going up or going down. For example, population happiness diminished with 1 point due to low QOL. That means quality of life, which is this tab here. We'll look at that in a minute. But basically, yeah, you want to keep your people happy. The happier they are, the less problems they'll give you in terms of negative events like rebellions, riots, that kind of stuff. You know, you can get rebellions in this game, which can be quite troublesome if you get. So you want to keep your people's population happiness high. If their population happiness starts going down, they will start leaving. They'll go to other zones. They might even go to other regimes, I think. And in extreme circumstances, they'll just become free folk again. And you don't want that to happen, because getting them back in can be difficult. Okay, this one's for workers. This is just your worker happiness. It's basically the same tab, but just for your government paid workers. The guys who work in your assets that you've built. Civilization score. This is a mix. So civilization score is separate to each zone. So you'll see that this is the way this is count. You'll see that each zone has its own number. Look, in this game, my civilization score is kind of low, but I'll just show you the UI. But this is another complicated topic. Generally speaking, the higher your civilization score, the happier your people will be. The more wealthy they'll therefore be. If you've got a very high civilization, you'll attract people from other civilizations and free folk. I think if you've got a free movement policy, if you've got a really high civilization score, people may come from other zones. I'm not certain about that. You'll have to ask somebody who's more expert than me, but I think that's how it works. Civilization score is mostly calculated from quality of life. So a quality of life comes from the assets that you've got that produce quality of life points. So these guys, yeah, the private sector builds a lot of this stuff. So look, town customs, this gives you 50 security quality of life points. The parks gives you 50 entertainment quality of life points. The schools give you 50 education. You get the idea, right? And as they upgrade these levels of each of one of these things, it will give you more. Look, so when schools goes to level 2, it'll give you 100 quality of life points. When it goes to level 3, it will go to 150. You get the idea, okay? So the private, like nurturing the private economy is really important for quality of life if you're not willing or able to build your own quality of life buildings. The hospital here is an example of a government quality of life building. So you'll see here, hospital level 1 gives you 100 quality of life health points. The barracks gives you 100 quality of life security points, and it gives you some training bonus points. Have we got any more? Yeah, university is giving you school education points. All of these go into quality of life. So the more your quality of life is, basically the better your civilization score gets. This is quite a complex thing. So here goes. You've got your health, security, education, and entertainment. This is your score, but these are the actual points you're getting from your assets. The calculations is a little bit more complex. So this actually tells you I think it tells you the formula. Yeah, quality of life points get divided by the city level to arrive at the quality of life score. This is another top tip that you need to know. Do not raise the size of your towns until you need them, because if you've only got, like, let's say you've got a medium civilization here with a big town level 3, yeah, it's a level 3 zone, medium quality. If I go up to level 4, hoping to build level 4 assets because, I don't know, I need a big airbase or I want more industry from my hexes, be aware that it will reduce your quality of life because of this formula. So 50 security points here, look, divided by 3 is... Oh, hang on. The quality of life gets divided by city level to arrive at the quality of life score. There's some more stuff going in here too, by the way. So yeah, 50 security points. It should be divided by 3, but I think there's some other stuff going on here. But this is the basic formula. So if you've got 100 health points, yeah, like this one looks a bit more accurate. So 100 health points divided by 3, you're getting about 37, or there's a little bit more here because you get these bonus points in as well, and the bonus points comes from various different things. But let's say we were at medium civilization, but we're at level 4, which would be a small city or something. In that case, this health score is going to be actually going to be around 25, not 37. So do not level your cities up until you need to. It's really important. You will lose the game if you know that's it. I've lost games doing that. Go and check my Minos Tribe video series for an example of where I made that mistake and it really bit me in the ass. Okay. So yeah, that shows you quality of life, civilization score. It's super important. You're going to be looking at this a lot. Cultural adaptation scores, not that important. Even for an advanced player like me, this doesn't really come into it very much. I think this is probably going to be fleshed out more later. At the moment, it feels more flavoursome than anything else, but it does have game effects. If I go and conquer, let's say we go and conquer Moonthor. Moonthor is Tropian culture, okay? So this is Tropal domain. Tropal domain own this zone. They made this zone, and so the culture is actually Tropian, yeah? But if we go and take them over with our deep Fortean culture, that means that we're mostly going to be getting we've got different people. That affects some minor things. One of the things it affects is how quickly people will be willing to join your armies. If they've got like a different culture, they're less likely, it'll take longer for them to adapt, so you'll get less recruits. I think happiness is lower as well when you've got a different culture. Also, yeah, fertility changes. So, you know, the more fertile they are, the more natural growth you'll get to your population, because population grows ever so slowly. So let me just show you here. You'll see here, look, population increased with 200 inhabitants due to natural growth. Natural growth is really small in this game. It's not designed really as one of these. You can sort of sit around and just build your population up, but it takes a long time. It's really a conquest game. But anyway, this cultural adaptation score is that you can affect cultural adaptation, by the way, if you care about that stuff. I think mind increases it. Yeah, so for example, there's some regime feats that help it, like curiosity. This gives you a cultural adjustment bonus of 40%. Cultural adjustment also culture also affects the types of units that are recruited automatically as militia. If you remember how I was saying that the game is cool because it automates certain things if you don't want to manage it yourself as a beginner, one of those things is militia. So the higher your militancy level in a zone, the more chance you've got every turn of a militia unit being formed. And militia units are basically these free military units. They're never quite as good as your main professional military, and they don't fight as well, but they're damn useful. You can use them I use them for reconnaissance. You can use them to like, for example, this guy, he's just sat on my zone, and so if there's a riot or something, you can use those guys to bring in the jackboot. You can have them sitting on important hexes in case an enemy is going to drop an air unit on them, or in case they invade, you've got something there to fight. So that's and the types of units you get from this are quite different, and they will change depending on the culture, believe it or not. So god, Shadow Empire is such a complex game, but you don't need to worry about this, okay? It's really not that important when you first play. This is honestly, even at quite high levels of play, culture's not that important. It's more of a flavor thing, at least in my opinion. Other people who are more veterans, you know, even more veteran than me, probably disagree with me there. Finally, we've got the logistics button. This gives you an overview of the amount of logistics points available in this zone. So, for example, here I don't have much logistics at all, but it tells you how many truck points you've got. It's how many rail points you've got, because there's two different types. You've got truck stations and rail stations, which you need rail for. Tells you the action points that your trucks have, because all of your logistics have action points as well. And port points are in the game now if you play Oceania, the DLC, so that it shows you there. And then it tells you next turn's points as well. I am not going to talk about logistics in this video. It's going to be too long, but logistics is a big topic. All right. Okay, folks, I think I'm actually going to end this here because there's a lot more to look at, and I don't want this video to be like an hour long or 2 hours long. It's just nobody's going to watch it. So I'll leave my discussion on game UIs to another time, and in the next episode we'll come back and we'll look at the rest of the stuff. By the way, it's not going to be a huge video. I think one more video and we'll have covered the UI. I'm sorry that the game seems so complex that you need to have, you know, so much stuff just to dedicate to the UI, and I went into a little more detail than really I'd intended to. Let's just look at the hex overview stuff just quickly, so before I end. So when you're still looking around in map mode and you've got the I key selected for your inspection mode, right, you can click on hexes, and each of the hexes has got a bunch of statistics. Let's just click on one of these. So as I click on our zone, look, this green landing here, you'll see. You'll see it's on the coast, and we've got this building icon to show that we've got buildings here. Shadow Empire is a beautifully designed game in that people complain about the graphics, but the graphics are really, really clever, because actually this shows you the size of everything at a glance. So you can just see like how big a settlement is just by looking at the, you know, how the buildings are. Okay, gives you an idea of what's going on. Beautifully, I think they're beautiful, really, really made, nicely made graphics. Every single unit, by the way, in the game has multiple. There's so many graphics depending on the different types of gun they've got. There's so much effort gone into this game. All this artwork was hand done as well. It's really, really cool. Anyway, so in the unit inspection, like unit panel, I said, let's look at this hex here. This is a high grassy mountain, high mountains grassy. It tells you what it's called Tennis Heights. This is part of Tennis Heights. That's the name of this place. So if you create a zone here, it'll be called Tennis Heights. So a lot of the game kind of generates these like areas, natural areas, and gives it names and things. It's really cool. Okay, tells you if you zoom over this picture, or if you mouse over this picture, this gives you combat information that you're going to need. I'll just go through this really quick. Zone name, area name. So the area name is kind of like the area that the game gives to these like mountain ranges or to the forests and stuff. So it just helps you organize things. It tells you if there's a river nearby. So you'll see here on this hex, we've actually got a river to the southwest, and this is it'll show you here. Look, small river to the southwest. That's important when you're planning an attack, because if you're attacking over a river, you're going to get combat penalties, and if you're defending over a river, you're going to get really, really big combat bonuses. So terrain is super important in the combat section of this game. It tells us how many recon points we've got in here. So that kind of determines not only how much you can see. So you'll see here, we can't see what's in these enemy units. We don't have enough recon points. We've only got 17 recon points here, which you can see here. But on my own hex, I've got 25. Different, like when you start doing, like if I attack into here, or if I do an air recon, or we've got motorbikes or buggies or something nearby, then you'll get more recon points, and that's shown here. Ignore the maritime logistical points for entering the hex without a port at the moment. That's the DLC stuff. You don't need to know that yet. Troop type. This is the attack modifiers, movement penalties, and that kind of thing for each of the troops. So you'll see on this agricultural hex, there's basically no attack modifiers for infantry or guns, but motorized and tanks get a minus 25% penalty. That's because you've got like bocage. Do you know what that is? Like basically when you've got farms, there's usually little ditches, drainage ditches and things like that around the edge of farms that make it so that, you know, infantry can kind of hide in them and defend well. So, and tanks have a bit more of a difficult time getting through agricultural land than they would if they're just in flat plains. Grassy plains, though, you'll see here, look, there's no attack or defense modifiers at all for anything. This is your standard kind of like, you know, hex. Let's go back to the high mountains. You'll see that guns, so like underneath the troop type, I can't really move this, by the way, because the tooltip doesn't stay, but you'll see under where it says troop type, guns have got an attack modifier. So like, you know, towed guns don't attack very well into this. Motorized and tanks in high mountains grassy get a minus 75% attack penalty. So tanks are absolutely abysmal attacking into mountains, and when they're defending in mountains, they get a minus 50% penalty as well. Whereas walkers, which are like giant robots essentially, walkers don't get any penalty at all. So that tells you that when you're, you know, if you've got a load of mountains to go over, don't bring tanks, bring walkers and infantry, because they're going to fight really well. Okay, so yeah, you've got the attack penalties, movement penalties, across river penalties as well. So if there's a river as well, it will tell you what extra penalties are there. And then at the bottom, you've got move type costs for each unit type and for your different logistics types as well. So if you're really, really detailed and you really want to plan stuff out, you can actually look at these and go, okay, you know, I've got an idea that if I'm going through this territory here, I'm going to need a certain amount of truck points. If I'm going through the mountains, wow, that's going to be, you know, way more truck points to get through. So therefore, I'm going to, you know, you can plan things a little bit more carefully. Every hex has got a temperature which can affect fighting conditions, and it will affect crop growth and various other things. You've got how much rain is there, so it'll tell you. Yeah, this is getting you more into the complex simulation side of things, so I'm not going to go through this too much. But how much rain it's got, you've got how many scavenging points are in the area. So like if you're looking at ruined cities on the post-apocalyptic ruins, it'll tell you how many scavenging points are there. This is how much metal and oil that you can recycle out of these old cities. Air is, yeah, I think this is the amount of movement points you've got, I think, for your air bases. I forget now, but anyway, larger air bases will have a higher number, which means that you can field more aircraft successfully from that place. Reconnaissance, I've already talked about. It's how many recon points there are on the hex. How many stack points? So if you've got a massive stack of units in one place, you'll have a higher stack number. Once you've got more than 100 points, then you're going to get an overstack penalty. So if you've got like a massive amount of units all stuck in one place, or very large units all in one place, an enemy attacks into you with a smaller force, they actually get a bonus because you can't fight well because there's just too many troops there. Penalties. These are movement penalties to getting into a hex. So, like, it'll tell you if there's... I think if I select this... actually, I don't think I've ever seen this. Current extra AP cost caused by penalties to enter the hex. Okay, right. So, that would be, for example, let's say we're moving... Let's say this is an enemy force, and I want to move from here to here. Okay? Through the enemy's zone of control. The enemy's zone of control will be inflicting an action point penalty on me. So it will tell you there how many extra penalty points you'll need there. Look, 10 points it's having here. That'll be because the enemy's got there's one unit with with a zone of control. This one here is probably going to be more. Okay, I can't remember exactly how that works, but basically it's to do with zone of control penalties, I think. Finally, you've got radiation. You'll see that you've got these little radiation symbols. After 100 radiation, you start getting penalties to your readiness. So I didn't even show you this stuff. I'll show you this as well before we go. I'll have to go through this part. Wow, it's going to be a long video. So yeah, radiation basically affects unit readiness. The higher eventually, if radiation is very high, after there's been a nuclear attack, or in some of these, like for example here, there's 409 radiation, you'll actually start getting casualties because the radiation's so high, unless you've got radiation protection on your troops, which you can research later. So yeah, radiation's a thing. It's quite important, especially at the start of the game, and it comes into things when nuclear weapons start getting flung around towards the end of the game as well. Okay, let's finally look at the rest of these tabs. So we talked about the zone tab. We've talked about, yeah, we've looked at all of this stuff. We've got the zone, we've got the regime. What do we call it? The regime kind of tab here, or this. If you just click on different areas on the map, this is Elysius. Look, this is owned by by Elysius, and it's saying that it just gives you some information on their regime. So at the moment, this number here is their relation points with you between 0 and 100, or 1 and 100. It tells you the type of regime. They're a Republican and they're a major. You got two types of AI really: major regimes and minors. Major regimes can win the game. They can do more complex diplomacy with you. They're like other players basically. Then you got minor regimes, which are just kind of like small players. They tend to get swallowed up towards the end of the game, but you can also do diplomacy with them. They've got their own set of cards to deal with. Okay, so it tells you whether you're friends with them, like what your diplomatic status is, and you can play stratagems on them from here too, like diplomacy stuff, asking if they want to trade, non-aggression pacts, that kind of 4x stuff. Here at the bottom you've got so how many recon points you've got on their regime as a whole. The more you've got, the more you can see into their territory. So if we get a load of spies in here, we'll be able to see enemy formations, that kind of stuff. Sometimes you'll be able to see cities, what kind of assets they've got in their cities. Look, okay, we've got an airbase here we've spotted. But the information will be more accurate the more recon points you get. Communications level, so yeah, you can open various levels of communication using diplomacy, giving you different benefits. trade deal level, research pact level, military pact level. This is all fairly self-explanatory. This is all stuff you can increase using stratagem cards. Import tariffs level. So if you've got import tariffs set, every time they trade with you, in the background simulation, you're going to gain some money. Export tariffs, if you trade to them, you'll make some money. Okay. Right. Next, we're looking at the unit tab. So this is the unit bottom tab, right? And this shows you, this is a picture of the unit. So here we've got a militia unit. This tells you what type of unit they are. So you'll see if we click on a normal military, it's a regular unit. If we click on a militia, it tells you it's a militia. It tells you their weight, which is important for logistics. So if you remember, I showed you can move strategic moves around. That means you're loading everything onto trucks or trains and then moving them along your network. The weight of the unit then becomes very important because it tells you how far you can, how many logistical points you'll be using. So to move troops is quite cheap. To move food and things is quite cheap. Metals and stuff are a little bit more heavy, so they take more logistics points. Things like machines and tanks and some of the very biggest military units in the game can be very heavy and difficult to move through logistics. You have to have very large, very wide and fast distribution networks to be able to do so. So be aware when you're building all these wonderful artillery guns and things, and you've got to transport them all the way to the front. If you've not got the logistics to get them over there, then you're going to be in big trouble. Also, ammunition. Ammunition is a big thing in this game, and if you don't have the logistics to transport ammunition to the front, you're in big trouble. Okay, so let's go back to the unit. This one is their action points for the turn. So you'll see that if you move a unit, look, the action points go down. So I actually strategic moved them accidentally, so we lost all our action points. But let's say we move these guys. Look, I moved them into this mountains here from this port. So you'll see that move mode is saying 60 action points. This is on. See where the this part here where it says move mode. You'll see as we move around, it will give you an indicator of how many action points you're going to spend as you move. It shows you how far you can move. Notice that the user interface highlights in a lighter color as well to show you where you can move. You can't move here, look, with this guy, but we can move here. And it's going to take 80 action points. That means it's going to have 20 left when he gets there. Those 20 action points can then be used. Look, you can see he's still got a couple of pips at the top of his card. This means that you can still join in an attack, but you'll only be fighting for 2 rounds. So that tells you your action points. It also talks about any modifiers on your action points. So if you've got no fuel, for example, for a vehicle, it will be reflected here. Various stratagems and other modifiers are going to be shown here too. Readiness is your ability to fight right now. It goes between 0 and 100, and moving reduces it. So if we move this militia unit, look, you'll see that we lost 5 readiness. We move it again, we lost another 5. So you will lose readiness points just moving. They will gain them by sitting there and doing nothing for a turn. They'll regain them. If you get attacked, or you attack, you'll lose the readiness. So let's see if we've got so you saw these combat here. These guys attacked. They've got only 13 readiness now, which means if they get counter-attacked while they've got low readiness like that, their combat modifier is extremely low, which means there's a natural ebb and flow to combat. And if you've just done a load of attacks with a bunch of units, you kind of want some other units sat there defending as well with higher readiness, because if you haven't, it represents that your troops are disorganized. They're kind of they're not fallen. They've not been able to dig in. Well, actually, digging in is kind of represented by entrenchment here, but it's a general representation of how ready they are to fight right now. Are they in formation? Are the command structures in place? Are non-commissioned officers and commissioned officers, have they been replaced in the command structure? Or have you had casualties and you need to replace your officers? Have your ammunition got out to all the units? That kind of stuff. Okay, that's all shown by readiness. There are things that affect readiness, like radiation affects readiness. If there's a high radiation, if it's very hot or cold, their readiness will change. Casualties, exposure, if they're starving, all these things affect readiness. It's a really important thing. By the way, you can see it says well fed here. If your units are starving, it will tell you here, and that will affect readiness. Okay, there's some other stuff in here as well, talking about strategies and various other things. It'll tell you whether your leader's modifiers are affecting readiness, whatever. Here's your morale. Again, there's a whole bunch of stuff that affects whether what morale level you've got. It tells you what it was at the previous level. It tells you how it's moving. Morale is a fluid thing, and it changes based on whether they've taken casualties, whether they're winning or losing battles, whether how well paid they are compared to how well paid they are, if they're being paid. If they missed a payment because you've got no credits, that'll go down a lot. Morale is really important. It's a huge modifier in combat. And so all of your morale stuff there is going to be shown. This is experience calculations. It just tells you whether you've gained or lost it. Whether you've gained experience and what is contributing to that. Entrenchment. When you're sat there not moving, your troops will automatically dig in, and different types of troops dig in at different rates. And the maximum entrenchment level depends on the type of hex. So if you're sat on mountains, you can't entrench as high as. Hang on, let me think about this. No, if you're on plains, you get a lower overall entrenchment level. There, look. So these guys are at 50. These guys are at 125 in agricultural, but they've been sat there for a long time. They will gain entrenchment points the longer they're sat. So basically, when you're fighting, if you can set up lines, even in areas that are difficult to entrench, and they will dig in naturally. There are some stratagems you can play in order to make them dig in deeper as well. And entrenchment's a huge modifier on combat. So it's shown there, and it tells you everything that's. Look, for example, this is an agricultural tile, so the minimum entrenchment you will have is 50. You automatically get 50 entrenchment as an infantryman lying in a field with barley growing around you. And the maximum you can get is 125. But if you're a tank, you don't get any entrenchment, okay, in agricultural, because you're weak in agricultural, because they're easy to spot and they're easy to see from a long way away. So different unit types will entrench in different terrain. Okay, where are we? Then we've got organizational structure, and this is okay, let's look at a military unit. So we've got these guys. I'm just going to move some of them out. This is the command unit here. This is the OHQ. This one, the 1st Infantry. 1st Machine Gun Infantry Brigade, right? That's the top of the command tree for those guys. And it tells you HQ power. The further away your individual units are from their HQ, after 5 hexes, they start losing a bonus, like a command bonus they get, which makes them weaker in combat if they're further out. This tells you that. It tells you anything else that's affecting them. So this is all the organizational info. Also tells you the skill effects of the commander. So here's your commander. You can talk to him here. It shows you all his statistics. God, there's a lot of stuff to show. But we'll come back to that in the next video. Suffice to say that all of your organizational stuff is in here. Tells you about the commander's effects on action points, whether he's giving you extra action points, on his readiness gain. So like a good commander will make them ready faster after they've fought, or they've moved or whatever. It's all in there. Finally, you've got supplies. Every military unit needs food. They need replacements, like if they've lost members of their unit, and they need ammunition. And some of them will need oil as well. So fuel. So for example, this unit, it's got trucks involved. They've got some irregular trucks here, for example. So they need fuel as well. This will tell you whether they've received or request if they've fought or they've they're low. Look, you'll see this guy. He's only got 10 ammunition out of 41. That has been requested. So they need 41 ammunition in order to fully replenish their ammunition stocks. Until they've got that, you'll see the number here is red. This means they're going to be fighting at a disadvantage because they just don't have that much ammunition. But you'll see here they've got plenty of food. They requested 10, they received 10. That came from their supply lines. Okay, and then it tells you the upkeep and stocks. There's another hidden thing here, by the way. If you look at this tab here on the SHQ, this tells you overall logistical requests between the SHQ and the zone. Okay, this is complex stuff, so I wouldn't worry about this for the time being. But that's kind of hidden there. Okay. All right, we've got the regime tab. I'm going to go through this quickly now, guys, because my throat is dying. Here's your regime, tells you who you are. It gives you an overview of the profile it's actually in here. So, you know, you can just see this here. It tells you your tech level and your culture type. Also tells you which political groups are in power in your government. So you can see here the Steel Knights and the Equality School almost sharing power with 37%. And then the Merchant Syndic Society are slightly less. So this is your Senate. Different types of regimes will have different types of government. So we are a meritocracy, so we've got a Senate. But if you're an autocracy, you'll have like a closed council, basically. So just imagine Stalin and the 3 guys that he trusted with power around him. Okay, and then the democracy has its own. It has a parliament. Alrighty. Finally, we've got assets. Not finally, we've got 2 more tabs, and then I'm going to finish. Assets shows you all the buildings. Okay, so there's different tabs. So if, for example, you've got a zone with a lot of assets on, you'll see that you'll get more tabs here. These buttons control what you see. If you just want to see what's in this hex only, you click this one. So for example here, let me just put myself on inspect mode. Here, the only asset we've got is an agricultural facility or a farm that I built. If you look at this one, there's a private harbour. This is a private sector building. All you're seeing with this button here is what is in this particular hex, okay? If you want to see what everything in the zone though, you click this button. And then you'll see, look, in this hex on our SHQ zone, our headquarters, hold on, back to assets, you'll see that we've got 3 tabs. So there's 7, yeah, show 7, depending on your UI size, I think. So we've got 7, 14, 20, there would be 21 maximum, so 19 altogether. You can further sort this into private and public by these buttons, okay? So this is all the public assets. This is stuff that you've built, or in this game I've built, okay? So you'll see that we've got our hospitals and the barracks I've just finished constructing. We've got the bureaucratic offices that we've got 22. This is in construction. If we look at just the private stuff here, then you see we've got 2 tabs worth of just private sector stuff. So these are the tabs to select public or private. Finally, this is delegated and tasked assets. Okay, so you won't use this much, but let's say that you've got a zone. You've got a zone here and you've got a zone here, and let's say that this oil. See this facility here. Sorry, let's say this facility here was really far away from our zone, but we still need to. We need it operating from another zone because of administrative strain or something. You would click this button, because what you can do is you can actually assign. There's a button here to delegate this. So if you click delegate, and then you can select the new zone that the oil drilling facility will be subject to. So let's say we've got a closer zone here. You might just extend your borders out and say, actually, I want this to be controlled by another zone. That's how you do it. It's that button. So if any delegated buildings, you can click out and check with that. All right, so that's how you sort through all your assets. Let's just quickly show what the asset cards show. Let's look at the port here. The port is using 256k workers, so you need 256,000. If you the tooltip here will tell you how many you needed and how many you've got. So for example here, the bureaucratic office 2, it's in yellow, and that means we needed 7,000 workers, but we only had 6,900. So that means that we're going to have a reduced output on the efficiency of this building. Okay, so if we actually click on this, you can see some important info. This is the various levels and what it gives you. The top level, by the way, is level 7. But level 2 bureaucratic office, it tells us how much it costs to construct, the upkeep costs every turn in workers. So like certain buildings will cost money just to upkeep. For example, let me see if I've got anything that might be costing upkeep. Yeah, most of them are just workers, but some of them will, for example, like a power station, just keeping a power station on will require fuel, okay, energy. Industry might be one actually. No, it's still only workers. Well, anyway, so you can see how much this industry level 1 will cost to construct. It means we need to, for 3 rounds, we need 500 metal, 80 industrial points, 1 machine, and 1,000 worker points. Okay, so those 1,000 worker points can come from workers or various things. Just to keep it going, you need 100 workers per turn, and if you want to produce anything with it, you've got to feed it 20 energy and 1,000 workers. So in this industry 1, look, you'll see that we needed 1,100 worker points. The reason is because we need 100 just to keep it going, and then to actually work in there we need 100. So 100 sort of like maintenance staff, and then 1,000 workers to actually produce the industrial points that it creates. We need 20 energy every turn that comes from our energy here. Okay, and yeah, so, and that will show these on this card. Look, it shows you we needed 40 energy and we used 40 energy. If you've got any problems here, it will show you. For example, we were, let me see if I've got a place that's struggling a bit. Oh, well, just for once everywhere seems to be happy. Oh no, here we go. Look, so I've got an agricultural building we're trying to build here, and it's saying 1 turn left, but look, we needed 5,500 worker points, but we only had 400. We also needed 100 metal to build this, but we didn't have any. So you'll see that it will show you what's missing, whether you're building or whether you're producing in that building. That every single building level has its own graphic, so you can see at a glance whether, you know, what level your building is. So, you know, a level 2 truck station has its own graphic look compared to a level 1. This is why Shadow Empire is beautiful, and why it really annoys me when people say Shadow Empire's got bad graphics. This is way better than some like soulless 3D crap that's just there to be surface level aesthetic pleasing. You know, this is aesthetically pleasing, but it's also informative, because look, every single one, most of them are different basically. Okay, they're not all different, I've just noticed, but they're pretty you know, up to a certain point they have their own graphics, so you can kind of get an idea of what level it is. Okay, in something like a quality of life building, it'll tell you what quality of life points it's producing. It'll also tell you if it's giving you any bonus points for stuff. So various buildings give you different things. Okay, that's the assets tab. There's probably more to... Oh yeah, alright, so you've got this is production percentage. You can change the production percentage. For example, if you've got not enough workers to fill all your buildings, and you've got a non-critical building, you can like change the production level here, and the resources going in will change appropriately. You can mothball it so that, you know, nobody works in there, you just pay the upkeep cost. So that's going to be useful if you're really struggling for workers, or for example, you can't store any more fuel and you don't want to be wasting fuel. You can just mothball your oil production drill or your oil drill without closing it. You can close stuff if you want to completely close it down for good. You can delegate it out, as I said, and you can disband it. I'm trying to remember what the difference between disband and close. Oh yeah, right. So I think close just gets rid of it. Disbanding it disbands it a single level. So like if you're building, let's say you've had a massive depopulation in a city, which will happen in Shadow Empire, whether it's because you've depopulated yourself by throwing too many people into your military, you've had a terrible event, you know, you got hit by a nuke, I don't know, something like that, you might find that the assets are too high for your quality of life, and nobody's sticking around and everyone's leaving. One of the things that you can do is you can drop the level of your assets by disbanding it, and you get some of your resources back. All right, yeah, there's a few other things that you can do here as well, but just, yeah, this is the basics. Finally, we've got the items. This is an overview of what's being produced, and yeah, in the zone. Okay, so this is a zone by zone. This is like a zone by zone based thing. I'll just show you this quickly. For food, this is the overall, you know, the net food that you've got. This is how much is coming into the zone. This is how much is being consumed in the zone. This is how much the zone is delivering from the zone to the SHQ. This is an important point, because the SHQ is what moves everything in your empire. There are certain controls to be able to let, for example, let's say that this zone is isolated from the SHQ for whatever reasons. In this case, you could have the food in your zone being your armies, they can actually take food from the zone, okay, directly from the zone, but that's not normally how it works. You have to set that. You have to call up the zone leader, look, and then go into this user interface here. I'll talk about this stuff in the next episode, but for example, if you set this to allow supplying of units if shortfall, this means that the zone directly can give food and anything else that they might need without having to go through the SHQ. But normally, every zone produces its own stuff like food, water, oil, whatever it's making, and then it sends it all the way via your logistics to your SHQ, and then back out from the SHQ, delegated to where it needs to go. So, for example, let's say this unit here needs oil. The way that works is this mine through the logistics chain will send its oil all the way to the SHQ first. It then sits in the SHQ stock, which is here, shown in this. Okay, it's shown here. So it starts out in the zone items. This will be oil here, right? It is produced, and it will show you whether it's being produced here. Yeah. So it will show you what it's being produced, and then it will go out to the SHQ, and it will disappear from this items list, which is showing you what's in the zone. It's no longer in the zone at this point. Now it's in the SHQ's inventory. The SHQ then determines who needs fuel and rations it out accordingly. So it will realise these guys are sat on a logistics line. Yes, we've got enough logistics trucks. You know, we've got enough trucks to get it there. And so it will send it out from its own inventory through the logistics into the unit's inventory. Okay, that's how that works. So this is really important to remember, because the big problem that people run into with logistics in Shadow Empire is not understanding how this works. Let's say you've only got like a couple, like me, you've only got a couple of logistics lines and they're not very well developed, so you've only got a few trucks. And then you find all this metal, yeah? So you start mining like 4 mines into this zone, here. You have to use your logistics to get all that heavy metal, and it is heavy as well, all the way back to your zone. And then if it's needed like in another zone, it's then got to be sent from the SHQ back out to where it's needed. So just think about that for a minute. So everything has to go into the SHQ first. This is why you might start seeing now why you might want more than one SHQ. If you've got a big map, let's say we've got a zone over here and a war front on this side, and we've got our own industry, and we've got, you know, like our main SHQs over here, say. You've got to transport all your stuff across that across all that distance, and it's all got to go through trucks or trains, and that you have to have workers, so you're paying workers, so you're paying more money. You've got to have more logistics lines, you've got to have more roads, you've got to cut the roads through these mountains, which is incredibly difficult to do. You're starting to see why it's not a great idea to then be sending everything that's produced over there all the way back to the SHQ, only to send it back out to where it's needed. This is why you need to start thinking about logistics early. But at least in your first games, don't worry about it too much, guys. It's not going to be a big deal. Put the easy logistics on, but later on, this is what this does. So this tells you exactly what is made in the zone, where it's going, you know, if it's been consumed in the zone itself, whether it's going out to the SHQ, and then how much is in stock. This is an interesting situation, because I've got a zone here that's not sending stuff naturally back to the SHQ because we're using a maritime trading house logistics route. This is a little complex, but you've got a transfer button here. You can actually manually transfer stuff from your zone to the SHQ if you want. So for example here, if I want to manually move metal, because it's not doing it automatically because of for whatever reason, it'll cost 150 logistics points. Bosh, there we go. I can manually do it myself. Now my SHQ's got 150. You don't normally need to do that, by the way, guys. I think the only reason it's doing this is because we're using a very unusual logistics thing, which is the DLC stuff. I think that's why this is here. For the most part, though, you generally don't need to move stuff around. It's usually stored in the SHQ. However, there are settings that you can use in order to kind of like make sure that certain zones stockpile what they need and only send out stuff to the SHQ that's extra. For example, Green Landing here's got 1,400 food just in stock. So let's say we ran out of food completely in the SHQ and our troops are starving, but these guys have got a bit of an excess. We could manually move food out if we needed to. This is micromanagement stuff most of you don't need to worry about, okay? Okay, my voice is dying. This is nearly an hour and a half video just for one half of the Shadow Empire UI. But I've gone into this in great detail, and hopefully you've got an idea of a little bit of the depth of the game. I do worry that, you know, somebody sees a video based, you know, talking about the UI, seeing it's for beginners, and they see it's an hour and 20 minutes long. So I think what I'm going to call this video is an in-depth look at the user interface in Shadow Empire, because this is talking to you about a lot of the detail of the game. I think the best way to use this video actually will be, you know, for people who are about to play and they bought the game and they want to get into it. I think, you know, you're going to get the most from this video there, because I've gone into quite a lot of detail. I've explained quite a few of the systems actually, and I probably will do as we go through this as well. So it might serve as a sort of overview tutorial. Anyway, thank you for sticking with me this long, if you've watched this long. If you've got any comments, please put them in the... Yeah, please comment. If you've got any questions, I've got a great community, and some of the guys in my community are way more knowledgeable on this game than me. And, you know, I'm pretty experienced with this game, but there's people who are way more knowledgeable because they play it more. And so if you leave a question, you're going to get lots of answers. So, and most of them will be good. I get a lot of people commenting on my videos, and I'd say about 90% of the advice that I get is good. 10% of it is like, yeah, not great, but 90% of it is really, really good. So yeah. All right, guys, any questions, just ask, and let me know what you think of the video as well. I'm not very good. I don't have time to do scripted videos at the moment, I'm afraid. So it has to be this kind of like format. I'm not really bothered about editing videos anymore, I'm afraid. I just don't have time for that. So yeah, but I apologise in advance if it's a little bit long and rambling, but this topic is a big one. And I think sometimes it's really important for you to see some of the underlying thought process behind why this stuff's here, right? Because I could just go through, yeah, this shows you food. This shows you whether, you know, like what your zone, this is stuff in your zone. This is civilization score. But unless you know what all this stuff's doing, I think it can, you know, it's not really that helpful until you've played it a lot. So, okay, catch you next time, guys. See you later.